Hello, everybody. That's me. And my background, briefly, is, and if I block this, somebody make sure you say, move the heck out of the way. My background is primarily in the food business. So you're probably saying, well, what the hell do I know about tech? Well, not a lot, but I do know a lot about business. So, my background is in Celentano frozen foods. Some of you might have seen it in supermarkets. That's where I kind of learned the business. I did go to college, and I got my MBA late in life. I decided that I wanted to go back to school. So, of course, my students, when I'm teaching them, think I'm nuts. Like, you know, why would you want to do that? So, I kind of split my time between consulting with early stage businesses. Most of them are in the food business. And then the other part of my time I'm teaching. And what I like is I'm able to mix my academic knowledge to applied for businesses, and I'm able to take the application and plug it back into my classes. So most of my students really like me. The ones who like to work, the ones who don't. So what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about the business model canvas. This PowerPoint, I'm assuming that Carlos can put it up on the site, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I would like to be able to actually use the canvases that are on the screen. So we're going to go through it. So how many people look like that when you're developing a business plan? Honestly. No? I would say most people are pretty frustrated. Who's not frustrated in writing a business plan? Okay. So, for those of you who have, why is a business plan so painful to create?
Where do you start?
It's what?
Where do you start?
Okay, so one is where do you start? What else?
Is that your area of expertise on the part?
Okay, yeah, that's true. The actual planning process is not an area of expertise for many people. Yeah.
There's a lot of unknown pieces.
There are many unknown pieces. Yes, you're right. And
I just want to get in and start moving things around. And talking about moving things around keeps me from actually moving things around.
yeah, that actually is quite accurate in that what you're really trying to say is a business plan takes too long. By the time you're done with the business plan, the opportunity might have disappeared. So, the business model canvas is a derivative of design thinking. It uses visual in order to create the business model. And it'll make more sense as we work with it. But the business model canvas works off the premises of a hypothesis. And this is a simple definition that I got. Something that needs to be true for your idea to work partially or fully, but hasn't been validated yet. And when you think about that, when you're starting up a business, that's essentially what you're dealing with. So the challenge in entrepreneurship is not only are you building a product, but you're also building a scalable business model. And that is hard. So what the business model canvas does is it allows us to visually place hypotheses into each of the 9 elements of the canvas. And why that's important is that it really forces you to think about all 9 elements. And the elements are, and for the most part, I think everybody will recognize them. We've got our customers over here, and we always start with the customer. You've got your value proposition, which is your product, but it's much more than your product. Customer relationships, channels, revenue streams, cost structure, key resources, key activities, key partners. So as you look at that, when you think about it, really that's the essence of building a business. I'm hard pressed to find the 10th component, but all of those work together. And the problem with a business plan is that you work it linearly, meaning you start at the beginning And you go through the process and you get to the end, which is usually the financials, and you go, "Phew, I'm done." Well, the problem with that is that's not the right way to plan or to think. The best way is doing it iteratively. And the business model, Canvas, helps us in 3 ways. It's visual. We all process visual better than text and audio. Everybody can, picture's worth 1,000 words. It's sort of a corny phrase, but it really is true. The business model Canvas allows a lot of freedom, but it's fenced in. In other words, it adds some structure to creative thinking, because the problem with the concept of out-of-the-box thinking is, well, how far out are we going to go? So this helps us keep focused. And then lastly, it's iterative. And we'll use some examples to illustrate that. One nice thing about the Canvas is that we use Post-it notes. So you never, ever write on the Canvas. One is because it costs you money to print it. The other is we are committing to something the moment we write it down. And you don't want to do that. So with a Post-it note, if you decide that, well, maybe you picked a segment or two of customers that you don't like, you pull it off. It goes away. So it's visual, it adds structure, it's iterative, and it allows you to continually think through what the business model is. Okay? One thing that this does that a business plan absolutely doesn't do is because it's structured to be a lateral thinking process, it forces you to make sure that things work together. Okay? A lot of people make that mistake, and I like to use when I'm teaching it in class, and I am typically teaching millennials, so they kind of get this. If you're building a product for the millennial generation, okay, and you come up with a really cool value proposition, you've identified the segments within there. You got to somehow communicate, and that's part of the channels, that your value proposition, you're here, and here is where the misfit would come in. If I'm developing a product for millennials, I'm going to communicate to them by newspaper ads. What's wrong with that? Right, exactly. Now, that's a very simple illustration, and you would probably think, well, wait a minute now, come on, everybody knows that. But as you start to build a business, you will find that the elements of a business plan many times do not work together. Okay. This forces you to think about that because it's a canvas, it's lateral, and the plan really is sort of split here insofar as this is your customer-facing side of your business. This is your back-end operations side of the business. So this here has to work together, meaning your value proposition, I hate to use product market fit, but I'll have to use that. Your value proposition has got to adhere to the needs, wants, the customer jobs. And you've got to be able to distribute it and communicate it in the right channels with the right customer relationships for the product and customer. So, you know, when you think about, if you think about Amazon, for example, okay, Amazon really kind of has this nailed down. Like, for example, what's Amazon's value proposition? What do you think? Who wants to take a stab? It's, by the way, they have two value propositions. Anybody know why?
Bigger is better.
Bigger is better.
Cheaper is better.
I would say something as simple as A to Z, we have everything you need, we're beyond books. Just to spitball.
What you want when you want it.
Mm-hmm. What else? Is Amazon all about product? Is that the only thing that makes them part?
Convenience.
Convenience, right? Service. Yes.
Yeah, they have built a lot of technology, like this whole Amazon Web Services. Nothing to do with
Right.
actual
I'm glad somebody brought that up. There's a case where a business has actually got two business models within the umbrella. There aren't very many who can pull that off. Maybe GE is another one. So there's other things in it. For example, one of the things in Amazon's value proposition is something called the long tail. Anybody know what that is? What's the long tail?
Long tail is the way of looking at products, how they sell, and the books that sell $1 million and the books that sell 100 copies
Right.
a year. If you take the total sales of those, they are same because there are millions of books that sell only 100 copies.
Exactly.
And there are 100 books that sell millions.
I wish I had students like you in my class. Jeez. Oh, and so unlike the traditional bell curve, the I don't want to draw on there, but the long tail is essentially this curve, which is you're selling small amounts of lots of stuff. So when you think about Amazon, one of the nice things is you can almost find anything that you need versus in a traditional brick and mortar store, due to space limitations, you can't do that. So it forces you to make sure things work together. Now, I'm just going to go through this quickly. The business model canvas, even though it's used a lot in lean startup and its background is in design thinking, it works in many different business environments. So if you don't know your business model, you can't build a business plan. Now that's kind of new thinking, and frankly in academia they still don't grasp this, so they jump right into the business plan. But if you don't know your business model, you can't build a business plan. It's lateral thinking, it's not step by step. So sometimes we need vertical thinking. Okay. When a pilot is landing an airplane, we hope that they're going through step by step. But when you're building a business model, you've got to think differently, and it's called lateral thinking.
Are you saying it's more organic? Because you're taking into account all the different components that one thing
Yeah, it's holistic.
is related to?
Yes.
So it's very integrated and holistic.
It is,
rather than
that's correct.
hierarchical.
That's right. It is holistic. You absolutely can't walk away from doing this and leave some major component out, because it shows up right away. Okay. It tests product market fit because a subcomponent of the business model canvas is what's called a value proposition canvas, and we'll get into that a little bit. And that's really that. It's where you see value proposition and customer segments. It focuses in on here. And feel free to just, call out a question. So a lot of small businesses don't do this, and they should, because today a small business needs to understand how their competitors are working. Okay? And a small business really needs to understand the major players' business model to figure out what their business model should be going forward. So if you own a taxi cab service, what do you think is going to happen 10 years from now? Uber is changing this whole structure. So therefore, if you are in that business and you don't understand Uber's business model, well then how could you possibly say, here's how I am going to grow or change with the marketplace without first understanding the competitor's business model? And you really can't match the competitor's business model. So if you're looking to get in e-commerce, you can't duplicate Amazon. I mean, that's just, it's not going to happen. And even in a corporate environment, the business model canvas works very well because you need to understand all these lean startups, what the heck they're doing. in a corporate environment, the value proposition canvas actually comes in very well for product development. And it also helps to establish product development and innovation within a corporation to make sure that you're not innovating for products that are not in the business model. So if you think about Microsoft's business model has changed over the years, they're really not interested in selling software in a box anymore. So therefore, you wouldn't want to be an innovation team at Microsoft developing software in a box. It doesn't fit the business model anymore. So the point is that it works everywhere. So there are major differences between the two. Business plans are static. People write them and then they put them on the shelf. Doesn't work. I think that was part of the pain of a business plan. There's a whole lot of focus on building the plan. The business model canvas helps you focus on the planning process as opposed to a hierarchical structure in a business plan. It covers everything. Many times, like key resources, key activities, very rarely do I see that outlined in a business plan. Yet the key resources, key activities, key partners many times can make or break what a business will be. And so on and so forth. So this, as you can put this up on the website, I think, right? All right, good. So, you know, you can go through that and read it in more detail. But this is design thinking. Desirability, feasibility, viability. The business model canvas makes sure you develop that. Desirability is simply put is, does the customer want it? Feasibility is, can I do it? And viability is, can I make money and can I get the capital to do it? And when you think about any business, if any one of those is missing, it doesn't happen. So if you have a really great product that you have tested and you know there's an opportunity in the market, there's a white space in the market, you can fill that. You have the team in place, you have the product development people in place, you've got all of the things, and you know, if we stick with food for a moment because it's always fun to talk about, you've got co-packers lined up and so on and so forth. But you've got a price point that's 50% higher than what's in retail. Now, you might say that sounds really stupid, but let me tell you something. From all of the entrepreneurs that I work with, and again, it's in food, but you know what the problem is across, is this happens many times. So the business model canvas, although it doesn't have desirability, feasibility, viability, your thinking overlaid on it helps you do that. So the nice thing about the canvas, and you know, I teach a whole class on it, so we can't do the whole thing tonight. The nice thing about the canvas is that it's a blank slate, and you can overlay any other strategic tool on top of it. You know, metaphorically laying it on top of it.
Can you explain a little bit design thinking?
Okay, why isn't this going back? Okay, design thinking, and I'm not an expert in design thinking, but designers, when they're creating something, address each of these components. And the guys from IDEO out in California, anybody ever hear IDEO? Okay. Now probably somebody else will challenge it, but they came up with this principle, well, if this is how we're designing things, why can't you take it to the next step and build it into business planning? Build it into product development. And that's the core essence of it. So it's just basically they borrowed what they do and applying it to business problems. And it really makes it very simple in terms of, you know, if you have an idea, if it can't pass those 3 tests, you got to stop. You don't have a business. Any one of those that is there that you're not able to fulfill, you got a problem. Now this is very different thinking. So when you walk out of here, you're either going to hate me or love me. But this is very different thinking. So The canvas looks deceivingly simple. It's a piece of paper. It's got these cartoon characters on it. However, it's a powerful tool insofar as it can be utilized in 3 stages, and we're not going to get to the other 2 tonight. But the first is the napkin sketch, and basically it's playing off the concept of, you know, we're having dinner or having a drink, and I got an idea, you sketch it out on a napkin. The napkin sketch is essentially, you're just putting post-it notes up on the board, and you've got free thinking, and so on and so forth. The next level of the elaborated, it's the same canvas, but then you're overlaying other business tools. So for example, once you got your napkin sketch and you like the way it looks, then you could start to test this with opportunity analysis, SWOT, an environmental scan, Porter's 5 forces, you know, so on and so forth. If it passes that test, you could take it to the next step and actually use this to create the business plan. So therefore, you start simple, and you could take it as far as you are in need of. So it's easy to learn in the beginning, and it gets more complex as it gets down. It gets very granular. I mean, over here, you're basically getting to the point where you're making sure that your business has economic viability. Because nobody wants a business that's not going to make money. So that's the levels. So that was just a real quick, and then I'll go through each of the segments.